She smirked in the courtroom and whispered, "Finally, those kids have a real mother." The judge had just taken my children away from me and handed them to my husband's brother's wife. I remember that moment like a photograph burned into my memory. The sound of the gavel echoed through the courtroom, and my heart dropped so hard it felt like the floor disappeared beneath me. My knees trembled, but I refused to let anyone see me fall apart. Across the room, my sister-in-law, Amanda Carter, adjusted her pearl necklace, leaned toward my husband and whispered something that made him nod without even looking at me. Then she turned her head, looked straight at me, and smiled. That smile, cold, victorious, the smile of someone who had just stolen everything that mattered to me. "Finally," she said under her breath, just loud enough for me to hear, "those kids have a real mother." The judge's words were still ringing in my ears. Custody of the children will remain with their father. My children, my world, my life, taken. Because of a woman who wasn't even part of our marriage until she decided to destroy it. I wanted to scream. I wanted to jump up and tell the court how she'd lied, manipulated, twisted everything about me. But I didn't. I couldn't. Because I knew in that moment emotion was exactly what she wanted from me. A public breakdown, proof that I was unstable, unfit. So I did the hardest thing I've ever done. I stood up, kept my head high, and walked out. The marble hallway outside the courtroom felt colder than ice. I could hear Amanda's laughter echoing behind me, followed by Ryan's low voice, the same voice that once whispered, "I love you" every night before bed. Now it just sounded like betrayal. My name is Laura Bennett. I'm 33 years old, and 6 months ago I lost everything I ever loved because of one woman's lies. I wasn't some reckless, chaotic person. I was a mother. Maybe not perfect, but I loved my kids with every breath I had. Ethan, my 8-year-old, with his curious eyes and endless questions. And Grace, my 5-year-old, my little sunshine who still slept with her teddy bear. They were my heartbeat, my reason to wake up every morning. But that day in court, the system took them away from me because Amanda, my husband's brother's wife, wanted to be the star of someone else's story. Ryan and I had been married for 9 years. We met in college. He was funny, confident, the kind of man who could make anyone feel safe. We built a life together, a small suburban home, a garden, kids, everything I thought defined happiness. But when Ryan's business started to struggle, Amanda suddenly became his advisor, his confidant. She was married to Mark, Ryan's older brother. Outwardly, she was perfect, elegant, organized, always composed. But beneath, that perfect smile was a woman who thrived on control. She had an opinion about everything, how I dressed my kids, how I cooked, how I spent my time. "Laura," she used to say with that fake sweetness, "maybe you should rest more. You look tired. The kids deserve someone with energy." I'd laugh it off back then, not realizing every small comment was ammunition. Little seeds she was planting to grow a bigger lie. And Ryan? He listened. Slowly, my husband started believing her more than me. He began questioning my parenting. He'd check the laundry, ask if I'd fed the kids breakfast on time, and complain about things that never used to matter. Every small mistake became evidence. I didn't know it then, but Amanda had started building a case, collecting details, twisting them, documenting moments that looked bad out of context, and Ryan trusted her because she played her role perfectly. The caring sister-in-law who just wanted to help. The day of the final hearing, I remember sitting in that courtroom clutching the photo of my kids like a lifeline. Amanda was sitting right behind Ryan wearing a soft beige dress and a smug expression, pretending to cry whenever the judge looked her way. She'd even volunteered to testify as a witness to my instability. She described me as emotional, neglectful, disorganized. She painted a version of me that didn't exist, a stranger with my face. Ryan didn't defend me. He just sat there in silence. And when the decision came, custody to the father, Amanda didn't even hide her grin. Her hand brushed Ryan's shoulder like she was comforting him, but her eyes were locked on mine, daring me to react. I didn't. I just picked up my purse, looked her dead in the eye, and said quietly, "Enjoy your victory, Amanda. You'll need it while it lasts." Then I walked out, alone, broken, but alive. Because even though I'd lost my children that day, I made myself a silent promise. I will not beg. I will not plead. One day the truth will speak, and when it does, every lie you told will burn. And that, right there, was the moment everything began to change. Before my life became a headline in a courtroom, it was the kind of quiet chaos every mother knows. Mornings started with cereal spills, Ethan's forgotten homework, Grace's mismatched socks, and my husband Ryan rushing out the door with a half-buttoned shirt and coffee he'd never finish. Our house wasn't perfect, but it was home, full of noise, drawings taped to the fridge, and love that used to feel unbreakable. I worked part-time from home as a freelance designer. It allowed me to be present for my kids, the school drop-offs, the dance recitals, the scraped knees. Ryan ran a small construction business with his brother, Mark, and that's how Amanda Carter came into my daily life more than I ever wanted her to. Amanda was Mark's wife, tall, polished, and the type of woman who looked like she stepped straight out of a lifestyle magazine. She had this habit of turning compliments into criticisms. "Laura, you're so natural," she'd say with that soft smile. "I wish I had your confidence to go out without makeup." At first, I laughed it off. She was family. Well, I wanted to believe her intentions were harmless. She'd offer to babysit, to give me a break, or stop by unannounced with casseroles just to check in. It all seemed friendly, until the comments started piling up. "Kids need structure, Laura. I'd never let mine eat on the couch." "You really should teach Ethan to respect authority. Boys who get too attached to their mothers grow up weak." Little remarks that lingered longer than they should have. Ryan used to shrug them off. "You know Amanda. She's controlling, but she means well." Except, over time, he started quoting her. "Amanda says Grace shouldn't still be using that pacifier. Amanda thinks we need to set stricter routines." It was subtle, but I could feel her presence in our marriage, invisible fingerprints on every argument. When things started shifting the year Ryan's company lost its biggest client, he came home defeated, stressed, short-tempered. Amanda suddenly became indispensable, sitting in their office late at night, giving Ryan business advice. She'd send motivational quotes, schedule meetings, even show up with spreadsheets. She made herself the problem solver, and me the problem. I remember one evening vividly. I was cooking dinner, still in my apron, hair a mess, when Ryan came home later than usual. Amanda was with him. They'd been going over numbers. She smiled at me like she owned the room. "Laura, you look exhausted," she said sweetly. "Maybe I should take the kids tomorrow so you can rest. Recharge." Ryan nodded immediately. "That's actually a good idea. You've been overwhelmed." Overwhelmed. The word stung. Because yes, I was tired. 2 kids, a job, a husband falling apart, but not incapable. Yet Amanda's narrative was spreading, thread by thread, through every corner of our life. Then came the first real fracture. Ethan had a minor bruise from soccer practice. Amanda noticed it when she picked him up one afternoon. Later that evening, Ryan confronted me, his voice low but sharp. "Amanda said Ethan told her you weren't watching when he fell. Were you even paying attention?" I froze. "He tripped over his shoelaces, Ryan. I was right there." But he didn't believe me. The trust we'd built over 9 years suddenly felt paper thin. A week later, Amanda, accidentally, sent me a text meant for Ryan, a message about how children suffer when mothers can't handle pressure. She apologized quickly after, but by then, the damage was done. Tiwas. Amanda had this eerie talent. She'd disguise manipulation as concern. She made herself look like the perfect alternative, calm, organized, unshakable. And compared to my emotional exhaustion, she looked better. She knew exactly how to play that contrast. Slowly, people started treating me differently. Ryan's parents began checking in more often. Teachers at the kids' school would ask if I was doing okay. The whispers grew legs. It was like being trapped inside a rumor I couldn't escape. I tried to confront Ryan. "You think I'm some kind of failure, don't you?" I asked one night. He sighed, rubbing his forehead. "No, Laura. I just think maybe Amanda sees things we don't." That line shattered something inside me. I started doubting myself. Every mistake felt magnified. If the laundry piled up, I panicked. If Grace cried too long, I wondered if I was really unfit. I began keeping lists, routines, photos, proof that I was doing everything right, even though no one had asked for it. But inside, I knew. This wasn't about parenting. This was about power. Amanda didn't want to help. She wanted to replace me. And she'd already found the easiest way to do it, by convincing the man I loved that I was the enemy. One night, I stood at the kitchen sink watching Amanda's taillights disappear after another visit. I whispered to myself, "She's not helping you, Laura. She's studying you." I just didn't realize how far she'd already gone, or how close she was to taking everything from me. It started with small cracks, things you could almost ignore. But soon those cracks turned into earthquakes that split my life apart. The first real shock came one rainy Tuesday morning. I was getting Grace ready for preschool when a knock echoed at the door. A woman stood there holding a clipboard, wearing a gray jacket with a county badge. "Mrs. Bennett, I'm from Child Protective Services. We received a report regarding possible neglect of your children." My heart stopped. I laughed nervously at first, thinking it had to be some mistake. There's no neglect here. "Who said that?" She didn't answer. She just looked around. At the breakfast dishes, the pile of toys on the floor, the laundry basket by the stairs, and scribbled something in her notebook. I could feel her eyes judging everything, like each stain on the counter was a mark against my motherhood. When she left, I stood frozen at the door, gripping the frame. Then I called Ryan. He sounded more irritated than shocked. "Maybe someone really thinks you need help, Laura." "Help? Ryan, they accused me of neglect. Someone's lying." He sighed. "Amanda did mention Grace looked thin lately." My chest tightened. Amanda, again. That night, I drove to their house, shaking with anger. Amanda opened the door wearing a silk robe and that same fake smile. "Laura, are you okay? Don't play innocent. Did you call Child Services?" She blinked, perfectly calm. "Of course not, but if someone did, maybe they're just worried about the kids. You know, after all the stress you've been under." I stared at her. Her tone was sweet, but her eyes were mocking me. She didn't need to say it. I knew it was her. After that day, Ryan stopped defending me. Every little thing became a fight. If Ethan forgot his lunch, my fault. If Grace cried at bedtime, my fault. If Ryan came home exhausted, my fault again. Amanda had planted the seed of doubt, and Ryan watered it daily. One night, after another argument, I found Amanda's message on Ryan's phone, a long text about protecting the kids from chaos and doing what's best for their emotional stability. She'd even written, "You're a great father, Ryan. You can't let her drag you down." When I confronted him, he didn't even hide it. "She's right, Laura. You've been unstable lately." Unstable? Because I cry? Because I'm tired? Because you're unpredictable, he said coldly. That word, unpredictable, followed me like a curse. Then the second visit from Child Services came. This time, they had multiple complaints. Grace supposedly missed her checkups. Ethan was under emotional stress. Both completely false. But somehow they had witness statements to back them up. Statements that matched Amanda's exact phrasing from conversations I'd had with her weeks before. It hit me then. She wasn't just gossiping. She was documenting everything I'd ever told her. Every bad day, every emotional moment, she'd written it down and twisted it into evidence. The social worker's tone was softer this time. "Mrs. Bennett, these things happen. Sometimes relatives mean well but make exaggerated claims. But I'd recommend therapy, just to show good faith." Therapy? To prove I wasn't crazy? I agreed anyway. I had nothing to hide. But the damage was done. The whispers had spread. Through family, school, even neighbors. Poor Laura, she's having a hard time. Those poor kids. I'd catch people glancing at me in the grocery store, pity in their eyes, as if I was already guilty. The final blow came from Ryan himself. One evening, he sat me down with a lawyer. "Laura," he said, voice rehearsed, "I'm filing for temporary custody, just until you get better." "Better? I'm not sick." "You need rest. Space. You're overwhelmed. Amanda's words again, echoing through his mouth. I felt my pulse hammering in my ears. So that's it? You're taking them away from me because your brother's wife thinks I'm tired? He didn't answer. He just looked at the lawyer who slid the papers toward me. I wanted to tear them apart, but all I could do was stare at my name written next to unfit custodial parent. A few weeks later, the court hearing began. Amanda arrived early, perfectly styled in her cream blazer, holding a neatly organized folder. She smiled at me like this was a PTA meeting, not a custody trial. On the stand, she cried, "Real tears." Or close enough. "I love Laura, but the kids need stability. Sometimes love isn't enough. Grace told me her mommy forgets things. Ethan said he gets scared when she yells." I sat there in disbelief. I never yelled at them. Not once. Every lie cut deeper, and every time I tried to defend myself, Amanda's fake concern made me look worse. Ryan sat beside her, stone-faced. The man who once held my hand through every struggle now couldn't even look at me. When the judge spoke, I already knew the verdict: custody to the father. For the children's welfare. Amanda smiled, and with that one smirk, she finished what she started, destroying my family and calling it protection. That night, I drove home alone. My children's toys still scattered across the living room, the TV frozen on a cartoon we never finished. I sat on the couch and whispered, "She wanted my life. Now she has it." But deep down, something in me shifted. The fire that had been crushed under grief started to burn again, quietly but fiercely, because I knew the truth. And one day, I was going to prove it. Yeah, the night after I lost my children, the silence in my apartment was unbearable. Their rooms were empty, their laughter replaced by the hum of the refrigerator and the sound of my own heartbeat. I sat on the floor beside Grace's teddy bear and cried until there were no tears left. Then something inside me broke, or maybe woke up. Because in that moment, I realized crying wasn't going to bring my kids back, but proof could. And I was done being the victim in Amanda's story. The first thing I did was start writing. Every single detail I could remember. Dates, conversations, visits, text messages, anything. I filled a notebook with names, times, and events. I printed school records, attendance reports, medical forms. I wanted a timeline, one that couldn't be twisted or erased. The next morning, I went to see an attorney, Ms. Harper, a sharp, middle-aged woman with eyes that could slice through lies like glass. She read through the court transcript, flipping pages slowly, then looked up at me. "You lost custody because of fabricated evidence and testimony from a family member," she said. "If you can prove those were lies, we can reopen the case. But we'll need more than emotion. We'll need facts." That sentence lit something inside me. Emotion had ruined me once. Facts would save me now. I started digging quietly. When I visited the kids at Ryan's house for the first time since the verdict, Amanda greeted me like nothing had happened. "Laura, you look better. Therapy must be helping." Her tone was syrupy sweet, but her eyes were sharp, watching for weakness. I smiled politely. "It's amazing what clarity does," I replied. I noticed little things during those visits. Grace wearing clothes I never bought. Ethan using a new tablet with Amanda's initials engraved on the back. Amanda standing too close, answering questions meant for me. It was subtle, but it was there. She wasn't just caring for my kids, she was replacing me. That night, I went home and created a digital folder labeled Project Truth. Inside it, I saved screenshots, photos, messages, anything that could expose her. Weeks passed. I stayed calm. I stopped reacting. I let Amanda believe she'd won. Meanwhile, I started reaching out, teachers, neighbors, even Grace's pediatrician. Slowly, the puzzle began to form. One afternoon, Grace's school counselor called me privately. "Mrs. Bennett, I just wanted to check something. Did you really cancel Grace's therapy sessions last spring?" I froze. "What? I never canceled anything." "Well," she said, flipping through her notes, "we received an email from your account saying you were discontinuing her sessions due to emotional instability." My stomach twisted. I hadn't written that. Someone had hacked or spoofed my email. Someone who knew the right words. Amanda. That night, I searched my old messages and found it. The email sent 2 months before the custody hearing, perfectly written in my tone, with my signature block. But one thing gave it away. A tiny typo in my last name. Bennett, with one it. I always used two. That was my first real piece of proof. But I needed more. Something undeniable. Something that would destroy her credibility entirely. A few days later, while scrolling through social media, I saw Amanda's latest post. Being a mother is the greatest gift. There she was, smiling, holding Grace on her lap, wearing my daughter's pink dress, the one I'd bought for her birthday. My jaw tightened. She was flaunting it, showing off my children like trophies. I zoomed into the background of the photo and noticed something strange. A pharmacy bag sitting on the table behind them. The label was blurry but legible enough to read my daughter's name, Grace Bennett. Curiosity turned into suspicion. I checked Grace's medical insurance portal. To my shock, I found multiple claims filed under her name for adult cosmetic treatments, Botox, skin fillers, procedures that had nothing to do with a 5-year-old child. Amanda had used my daughter's identity for medical fraud. The next morning, I took everything, screenshots, receipts, claim records, and went straight to Ms. Harper. She looked through the evidence in silence, then smiled for the first time. You did your homework, Laura. This isn't just fraud. It's a federal offense. And if she falsified this, imagine what she did in court. We filed a motion to reopen the custody case on the grounds of fraudulent testimony and criminal behavior. While we waited for the hearing date, I prepared like it was a war. I compiled witness statements, school records, and screenshots of messages Amanda had sent Ryan during the trial. All those manipulative, concerned texts that now look like psychological coaching. The woman who once destroyed my credibility was about to face a truth she couldn't manipulate. And the night before the new hearing, Ryan called. His voice was calm, almost guilty. Laura, Amanda says you're trying to start drama again. Can't you just move on? I paused. Tell her, I said slowly, that sometimes moving on means walking straight through the truth. Then I hung up, because this time I wasn't going to beg for my kids. This time I was going to make the truth do the talking. And when that courtroom door opened again, I wasn't the same broken woman who had walked out 6 months ago. I was ready, armed with proof and with the quiet fury of a mother who'd finally learned that silence isn't surrender, it's strategy. The courthouse looked exactly the same as the day my world fell apart. Same marble floors, same heavy wooden doors, same smell of paper and old dust. But this time, I wasn't walking in as the unfit mother. I was walking in as the woman who finally had proof. Amanda sat at the plaintiff's table beside Ryan, legs crossed, face glowing under her careful makeup. She still had that practiced poise, the calm arrogance of someone who believed she could never be touched. When she saw me, she tilted her head slightly and smiled. You actually came, she whispered as I passed. I never left, I replied quietly. My attorney, Ms. Harper, placed a thick folder on the desk in front of her. Evidence labeled neatly with tabs: insurance fraud, false testimony, identity theft. I didn't have to say a word. The truth was already sitting in that folder, waiting to explode. The judge entered. Everyone stood. My heart pounded like it did the first time, but this time it wasn't fear. It was focus. The hearing began with Ms. Harper's opening statement. Your Honor, 6 months ago, this court made a decision based on false testimony and fabricated evidence. Today, we bring forward new proof that Mrs. Amanda Carter, the key witness in that trial, committed insurance fraud and identity theft using the name of the minor child involved in this custody case. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Amanda's perfect smile faltered for the first time. The judge raised an eyebrow. Proceed. The first exhibit appeared on the screen, a pharmacy receipt under Grace Bennett's name, but the prescription matched Botox injections. Then came the video footage, Amanda signing the prescription pickup slip, clearly visible on the camera. Ms. Harper's voice was calm and cutting. Is this you, Mrs. Carter? Amanda shifted in her seat. It could be anyone. Please look closer, Harper said, enlarging the screen. The signature matches your driver's license, and this purchase was charged to your personal card ending in 9124. Amanda's face lost its color. She glanced toward Ryan, who stared at her in disbelief. "Amanda," he whispered, "what did you do?" Miss Harper wasn't finished. She clicked again, showing a series of text messages between Amanda and Ryan during the custody process. Messages I'd recovered from cloud backups. Amanda: "Make sure the kids look tired at the next hearing. It helps." Amanda: "Don't worry. Once she loses custody, everyone will see who the real mother is." The entire courtroom went silent. The judge's pen froze mid-note. Ryan's voice cracked. "You told me you were just helping." Amanda's composure shattered. "I did help. Those kids needed me," she snapped, tears spilling now, but not from guilt, from panic. "Mrs. Carter," the judge interrupted, voice like thunder, "you manipulated this court, falsified evidence, and committed crimes under a child's name. You don't look like a mother to me. You look like a criminal." Amanda broke. She covered her face, sobbing. But it was too late. The truth had already burned through every lie she'd built. Ryan stood up slowly, his eyes red. He looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time in months. "Laura," he whispered, "I didn't know. She said you were dangerous. I believed her." "You didn't believe me," I answered quietly. "That's not the same thing." He dropped his gaze, shame etched across his face. The judge cleared his throat. "In light of new evidence, custody is hereby reinstated to the mother, Mrs. Laura Bennett. The previous judgment is vacated. Furthermore, this court will refer the matter of Mrs. Carter's actions to the district attorney for criminal prosecution." There it was, the sentence that rewrote my life. I didn't cry, I didn't smile, I just exhaled for the first time in half a year. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited, cameras flashing, but I didn't stop. I walked straight past them into the sunlight, the same light that had once felt impossible to reach. Ms. Harper squeezed my shoulder. "You did this," she said softly. "No," I said, watching Amanda being escorted out in handcuffs, her designer heels clicking on the pavement. "The truth did." As I turned away, my phone buzzed. It was Ryan. I hesitated, then answered. His voice was shaking. "Laura, I'm so sorry. I was blind. Please, can I see the kids?" For a second, I heard the old part of me, the one that wanted to forgive, to fix, to make peace. But that woman had been buried under too many lies. "Unfit mothers," I said slowly, "don't answer calls from liars." And then I hung up. When I reached my car, I saw Ethan and Grace waiting with my parents. Ethan ran to me first, wrapping his arms around my waist so tightly I could barely breathe. Grace followed, burying her face in my neck. "Mommy, are we coming home now?" Grace whispered. "Yes, baby," I said. "We're going home." The tears came then, not from pain, but release. Every humiliation, every insult, every night I spent questioning my worth, all of it ended right there in that courthouse parking lot. Amanda's lies had stolen my children, but the truth had given me something greater, my strength back. The day after the hearing, I woke up before sunrise. For a moment, I didn't move. I just lay there listening. Then I heard it. Grace humming softly in the next room, Ethan whispering to her to be quiet because Mom's still sleeping. The sound that had been missing for months was back, the sound of home. The light through the curtains felt warmer than it ever had before, not because the world had changed, but because I had. I walked into the living room and saw my children eating breakfast together, their hair messy, milk spilling over the counter. Normally, I'd scold them. That morning, I laughed, because this chaos was mine again. "Mommy, are we really staying here forever?" Grace asked, her big brown eyes wide with hope. "Forever," I promised, kissing her forehead. "No one's taking you from me again." The days that followed were quiet but full. Therapy appointments, legal paperwork, school calls. Rebuilding what had been broken wasn't easy, But every form I signed, every appointment I kept, reminded me that I was no longer living under Amanda's shadow. Amanda was facing trial for insurance fraud and perjury. I didn't attend the hearings. I didn't need to. Justice was already working the way it was supposed to, slowly but relentlessly. Ryan tried to call again. I ignored him. Eventually, he sent a letter, handwritten, desperate, full of apologies that came too late. "I believed the wrong person," he wrote. "I thought I was protecting the kids, but I was destroying them. I destroyed you." I folded the letter neatly and placed it in a drawer, not out of anger, but closure. Some apologies aren't meant to fix the past. They're meant to confirm it's over. And for a long time, I'd thought silence made me weak. I used to believe that fighting back meant screaming louder, proving myself to everyone. But I learned that real strength isn't noise, it's control. When Amanda smirked at me in that courtroom months ago, she thought she'd broken me. She didn't realize she'd just forged something stronger, because once you survive being falsely branded, you stop needing validation from anyone else. I stopped explaining myself. I stopped chasing approval. I started living on truth alone, not opinion. Mitidmer Wagway at first. He'd been confused, torn between his father's words and what he saw. One evening he asked me, "Mom, why did Aunt Amanda say you were bad?" I looked at him carefully and said, "Because some people can't stand to see others loved for being real. They think they can earn love by stealing it." He nodded slowly, as if he understood more than any 8-year-old should. Then he hugged me and whispered, "I never believed her." That moment undid months of pain. Grace, on the other hand, just wanted to sleep in my bed again. She'd sneak in at night, clutching her teddy bear, and I let her, because I knew some wounds need closeness, not distance. The neighborhood that once whispered about me started seeing me differently. The same teachers who questioned my fitness now called me the strongest mom we know. The same relatives who doubted me sent messages saying, "We always knew you'd win." Maybe they were lying, maybe not. It didn't matter anymore. Because for the first time, I didn't need their validation. I was done proving myself to people who had believed my enemies' lies before ever listening to my truth. Months later, I stood at the edge of the park watching Ethan push Grace on the swings. The air was crisp, the trees shedding golden leaves. It was the same park Amanda used to brag about taking them to, but now it was just us. No shadows, no fear. A woman nearby smiled and said, "Your kids look so happy." I smiled back and answered, "They are, because they're finally home." And inside, I realized something deeper. I didn't just win a custody case, I won myself back. I still keep the notebook labeled Project Truth on my shelf, not as evidence, as a reminder. A record of every day I refused to give up. Every moment I chose patience over rage. Every time I stayed quiet when they wanted me to break. It reminds me that strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, "Wait," because truth doesn't need to shout. It just waits for the right moment to speak. Or today I volunteer with a local support group for women fighting false accusations. I sit with mothers who feel the same helplessness I once felt and tell them what I wish someone had told me. They can take your reputation. They can twist your words. They can even take your children for a while. But they can never take the truth. And if you hold on to it, it will find its way back to you. That's not revenge. That's redemption. When I tuck Ethan and Grace into bed now, I sometimes look at their faces and remember how close I came to losing them, and how the woman who tried to replace me ended up losing everything. Not because I destroyed her, because she destroyed herself. The truth didn't just save me, it exposed her. And every time my kids say, "Good night, Mom," I smile, because now those words are mine again. Not borrowed, not stolen, not questioned, mine. If this story touched your heart, take a moment, hit that like button, share this video, and tell me your thoughts down in the comments. I read every single one of them. Stories like Laura's remind us that sometimes silence isn't weakness, it's strategy. The truth doesn't need to scream, it just waits for its moment, and when it finally speaks, it silences every lie. If you've ever been betrayed, judged, or falsely accused, remember, your worth isn't decided by anyone's opinion. Stay patient, stay strong, and let your truth speak when the time is right. And if you love emotional, powerful stories of justice, betrayal, and redemption, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you never miss what comes next. Because here, every story has a voice, and every lie eventually meets the truth.